Okay, so I talked an awful lot, but actually all we're doing is we're connecting to a Kafka server, and then we're going to get all the records from the server. And as we get those records, we're going to print out their keys and their values over here. So I have that ready over here in the SBT console. We can say run, and let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see that it ran. The first thing you notice is that all these IDs are in different orders. So again, I entered these in this order over here, and you can see that order is maintained in the UI over here. But what happens is because these are stored in 6 different partitions here, they come back in different orders. So if you know Kafka, this is not a surprise, because when messages are sent to different partitions, they can be processed later in any order. So Kafka only guarantees order preservation within a single partition. And because I'm using 6 partitions over here, these 16 messages are coming back in what appears to be this scrambled order right here. So I just want to note that. Okay, so all those IDs are different. The other thing I want to note here is that there are some crazy looking characters here and here for the first 15 lines. So you'll see those everywhere except for number 16 right here. And what happened is the first 15 I keyed in manually. So I came over here and I used their user interface and I said produce a new message. And then I came in here and I started typing and I said, well, ID, and how about number 17 like that? And some part of typing these in manually is creating these bad characters right here. And then what I did for number 16 was instead of keying this one in, I started to notice that this data was a little wonky. So what I did here was I wrote a ZIO Kafka producer, and that'll be included in the GitHub repository. And you can see that when I use that producer, I did not get these crazy characters that I got for all the other values. So I think there's something wrong with their user interface, or more likely something I don't understand about this. And the reason I question that is I can type the values in over here and I can put the other values in here. You can actually validate these and they'll come back okay. But when you try to consume them with a consumer, you'll see this data right here. So I'm going to say just for now, just ignore those 2 question marks. This actually gets interesting in a later video. When I try to convert this data into JSON, you'll see that we actually have to do something to handle this because it will affect the way we try to convert this data into JSON values. But that's for another video. Right now we don't have to worry about that part. Now I want to come back to the code and see if there's anything else I want to mention for you. So again, we import the settings, we have a topic, we wrap our code with ZIO.scoped, so all the finalizers are run when the effect completes. We have consumer make, we pass in those settings, we get the consumer, we call consume with, we pass in a couple of parameters. I'm only dealing with these as strings right now. I didn't mention this part right here, but SERDI is a class and it stands for serialization deserialization. And all I'm doing right now is simple deserialization. I'm saying I just want to work with these as strings, as I note in this comment right here. And I'll get into this topic more in the future video when we convert these strings into JSON. So right now, the only thing to know is that SERDI is a data type that's built in, and you can see that ZIO Kafka SERDI right there. And it stands for serialization, deserialization. And again, I am just dealing with the key and the values as string types right now. And again, when we get into JSON, that'll get a little more detailed. The other part here is that for every record you get, and I should note that a record is this information right here. That's one record right there. For every record you get, this is where you put your business logic code in here. The other thing I did have inside of here was showing that partition information. So I had that in before and I took it out. So let me note that, or put that back in. And actually, if I do that, you can see these other things we can get. We can get the key, the value, the partition, the topic, the offset headers, and some other information right here, including the timestamp. So let me go to partition, and let's save that and come back over here. Let's stop that. Run that again. And now the only thing I want to note is that the partition information shows up over here at the end of each row. So we have partition 0, 4, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So this part here was just to show you the other information that you can get for each record. So again, you get a little idea of what you can do over here. Now get rid of that. Then I had some notes down here. Let me see if there's anything important. One note is that the data may not be printed in any particular order. I talked about that, and I talked about partitions. And now I'm calling consume with the simplest example. And you can see, again, that this code is fairly simple. There's a lot of boilerplate that goes from here to here, and then inside of this area right here, you write your business logic. When we take a look at the other consumer code and we use ZIO streams, you'll see that that code is a bit more complex than this. So what goes on inside of ZIO streams is that we'll actually be accessing information like aggregate, async, and then calling map ZIO and commit. This type of thing right here we have to do with the ZIO streams consumer approach. We don't have to do that here. So consume with is considered the simpler way to access a Kafka topic and process its records. So notes about consume with, it's a simplified API compared to the ZIO Streams API. It automatically handles offset commits. And again, you'll see that in the other video. Technically, this has less boilerplate because we're not handling this type of information that you see right here. It did have some boilerplate, obviously. And the important part is that your business logic goes inside of this area right here. You can almost think of a lot of this other code as being boilerplate, but again, it's only like 7 or 8 lines of boilerplate, so it's not that bad. And here you just focus on the business logic. So the trade-off is that with consume with, you have less fine-grained control over the streaming process. And conversely, the plain stream or the ZIO streams approach is going to give you more flexibility. And I cover that in the other video, so I won't get into that too much. And then the final note is that consume with is better for simpler use cases, while ZIO streams streaming approach is better when you need more control or you have complex processing logic. Now, one other thing I want to note while we're here is that if I come in here, all I'm going to do in this one is I'm going to change this one from earliest, and we'll make that latest, like that. Okay, save that, and kill that. So you noticed over here, I ran this twice already, and we got 16 values both times. Now when I run this again, you'll see that we get no data. And the reason for that is just this latest setting. This is telling Kafka, just give me the latest messages. Give me the messages that haven't been accessed yet. So Kafka is actually keeping information over here of, so on the screen over here, Kafka is keeping information as far as which records have been accessed already. And indeed, all of them have been accessed already. So because I changed this to latest, we're not getting any output over here. So when I mentioned earlier in this video that I have this as earliest, so we can see all of the records over here, that's what I mean by that. And one thing I want to encourage you to do also is change this line and make that a constant if you like. Use a name like this or any other name up here that's a constant, and change this value right here and change this value here. And so one thing I want to stress. So actually, let me be a little bit more clear about that. In the real world, your group ID is going to be a constant like that. Your group ID is probably going to be a constant like that. And in the real world, you'll either exclude this setting or you will make that latest. I say exclude because the default value is latest. So this is what... So this part is because you're going to have a meaningful name like order processing service or email notification consumer right here. And this part is so that you're always only working with new messages. Conversely, when you're in a class, when you're in a classroom setting, you're going to want that to be earliest. And you're going to want this to vary every time you run this over here. So now I save that, come over here, kill that, run it again, and now we'll see all 16 of our messages right there. Okay, now I think I have that. Okay, now I think I have shown everything that I wanted to show. This is, this is more or less, this is a simple as possible this is a simple as possible, and I should say ZIO Kafka consumer example that demonstrates a ZIO workflow solution. And the ZIO workflow solution part I got from the ZIO Kafka website. And what they mean by that is that we're using this consume with approach right here. So that's the end of this video. This is Alvin Alexander, and as always, I hope this has been helpful.